Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. My sister tried to steal my spotlight, so I planned a twist that left her speechless. I'd like to make an announcement, Sophie says, already half standing, champagne glass in hand, her eyes glittering with that familiar mix of excitement and entitlement. My stomach drops. I can actually hear the tiny intake of breath from my best friend Jade sitting beside me. The room is warm from bodies and fairy lights. My name is still glowing on the neon sign behind the mic. Emma Hart Creative Studio launch. And somehow, even now, my sister is about to grab the mic like this whole night is her pre-show. I reach out and lay a hand on the stem of her glass, gently but firmly pushing it back toward the table before she can raise it any higher. The conversations around us blur and quiet. I can feel everyone watching, confusion hanging in the air like smoke. Actually, I say, my voice coming out steadier than I feel. You will in a minute, Soph. Right after the video. I nod at the DJ, who's been waiting for this cue all night. The projector screen behind the bar flickers to life, and the first image, me at 16, painting at the kitchen table while everyone else gets ready for my sister's formal, fills the wall. Sophie's mouth snapped shut. It was a Thursday night, about 6 weeks before this party, when I found out my sister was planning to hijack my launch. I was sitting cross-legged on my couch, laptop open, trying to finalize the seating chart for the event. My studio launch was the biggest thing I'd ever organized. Rented warehouse-turned-gallery, catered canapes instead of my usual cheese board, fairy lights strung from beam to beam, a DJ who wasn't just my mate's cousin with a Spotify playlist. This was supposed to be my night. My first proper studio. A physical space after years of painting in rented corners and spare rooms and, at one point, a drafty garage. I was in the middle of rearranging names. Why did every branch of my extended family have a Dave? When my phone buzzed. It was a screenshot from Jade. Jade. Please don't freak out, but you need to see this. The screenshot was from a group chat I wasn't in, my cousin's Fam Bam thread. In between memes and wedding photos was a message from my sister, Sophie. Can't wait for Emma's studio thing. Might finally make one of her parties useful. Thinking of announcing our news there. At least then people will have something real to celebrate, face with tears of joy. My chest actually hurt reading it. I stared at the message so long my vision blurred. The words, something real to celebrate, kept burning themselves into my brain like a branding iron. I typed, deleted, retyped about 10 different replies to Jade. Finally. Me. What news? She answered almost immediately. Jade. I guess they're pregnant. Your cousin Mia said Sophie told her she wanted to do a big reveal at your party. Cake, confetti, the whole thing. I leaned back on the couch, feeling that old, sick feeling I knew too well when it came to my sister. Like I'd just been pushed out of my own house and told to be grateful I got to stand on the porch. This wasn't new. The potential pregnancy bit, yeah, that was new. But the spotlight stealing? That was basically our family sport. When I turned 16, Mum organized a joint birthday dinner for me and Sophie to save money. Fair enough. Except Sophie is 2 years older. She was turning 18. Guess whose milestone everyone talked about all night? At my high school graduation, when I won the art award, Sophie showed up late, walked straight down the middle aisle in towering heels, and loudly announced she'd been accepted into her dream commerce program. The applause for my award felt like leftovers by the time it reached me. At my first tiny art show in a cafe, she brought her new boyfriend and introduced him to everyone as my partner, the future lawyer, and made jokes about how at least one of us would be able to pay off Mum and Dad's mortgage. Everyone laughed. I laughed too because the alternative was crying into the hummus. Sophie wasn't all bad. That's what makes it complicated. She could be funny and protective in that, I can call her names, but if you do I'll kill you, big sister way. When we were kids, she'd punch anyone who teased me about my braces. She'd help me pick outfits, drag me to parties when I wanted to hide in my room. But somewhere around uni, the balance tipped. She became the successful one with the proper degree, and I became the artsy one with the questionable life choices. And she knew it. She wore it like a crown. Our parents fed it, too, without even realizing it. Look at your sister, Mum would say, scrolling through Sophie's LinkedIn at the kitchen bench. Such a good head on her shoulders. Stable job, good super health insurance. Then, to me, how's the painting going? Selling anything. Dad would chime in, you know, hobbies are great, but you can't live off canvases. The thing they never understood was that it wasn't a hobby for me. It was the only thing that made me feel like there was something solid under my feet. But try explaining that to people whose measure of stability is a pay slip with a company logo at the top. In spite of them, and to be fair, sometimes because of them, I kept going. I waitressed, I taught kids art classes on Saturday mornings, I sold prints online. I painted late into the night, my fingers permanently stained with ultramarine and burnt sienna. And slowly, like watching a plant grow in time-lapse, things changed. A local blogger wrote about my work. Then a bigger one.
A café com missioneda mural.
A corporate client asked for a series of abstract pieces for their lobby. My little Instagram account turned into an actual platform. 3 years in, I was making enough from art to quit waitressing. 5 years in, I signed a lease on a small warehouse space that would become my studio and gallery. I wanted to market. Not just with a quiet yay and a story post, but with a real celebration. Food, music, guests who weren't all just my broke 20-something friends. I invited my parents, my extended family, some clients, old teachers. I even invited Sophie and her husband, Ryan, despite the voice in my head that whispered she'd find a way to center herself. Because I'm an idiot. Or an optimist. Or both. Reading that screenshot, I felt the optimism drain out of me like bathwater. Of course, she'd want to announce a pregnancy at my launch. Of course, she'd decide my one big night, after years of grinding in ways she'd never really seen, was the perfect backdrop for her next life milestone. I called Jade. She cannot do this, I said, pacing my living room, one hand pressed to my forehead. I'm not crazy, right? This is psycho. It's not psycho, it's very on brand, Jade said carefully. But yeah, it's completely unfair. So what do? Tell her no? Jade suggested. Like with words. The thought of that conversation made my stomach twist. I could already hear Sophie's response. Oh my God, are you that insecure? People can celebrate more than one thing. Stop making everything about you. We sat in silence for a second. Okay, Jade said slowly, voice shifting into the tone she uses when she's about to help me plan something slightly unhinged but morally satisfying. Then maybe we don't just say no. Maybe we change the script. What do you mean? She hesitated. What if you preempt her? You don't have to expose her or anything, but you can make it very, very clear what the night is about. In a way that makes it socially impossible for anyone to hijack it without looking like a jerk. That's when the idea for the video was born. Over the next few weeks, in between sanding floors and hanging track lighting in the studio, I went through old photos and videos. Me as a kid, drawing on butcher's paper. Me working 3 jobs. Me painting in the cold garage in a hoodie and beanie. Me at my first cafe show with 30 people crammed into a room made for 15. Jade helped me splice it together into a 4-minute montage. We added little captions. First painting sold, $60 and a free coffee. Second job, kids art teacher / glitter vacuum specialist, garage studio, rent paid in spider sightings. At the end, I recorded a voiceover. For a long time, I thought my dreams were too loud, or too silly, or too fragile to say out loud in front of certain people. Tonight is the first time I've given myself permission to be the main character in my own life, just for a few hours. So if you're here, thank you for showing up for me, for Emma, for the girl who drew on scrap paper and dared to think it might one day matter. It wasn't subtle. That was the point. I didn't mention Sophie. I didn't mention pregnancies or announcements. But I made it very clear. This night had a protagonist, and it was me. I sent the video file to the DJ with strict instructions. It plays right before speeches, non-negotiable. And still, the closer we got to the date, the more the anxiety gnawed at me. Maybe she'd do it anyway. Maybe she'd stand up after the video and say, "Speaking of main characters, I'm pregnant," and everyone would scream and cry, and suddenly my decade-long grind would be a warm-up act. The night of the launch, I barely ate. The studio looked exactly how I dreamed. White walls, my paintings hanging in clean lines, fairy lights zigzagging overhead, music soft enough that people could talk. My parents arrived, both looking slightly overwhelmed but proud. Dad even wore a shirt with a collar. When Sophie walked in, wearing a silky cream dress that skimmed her stomach in a way that could be pregnant or had pasta, I felt my heart lurch. She squealed, air kissing both my cheeks, perfume enveloping me. "This place is so cute."
Cute.
"Thanks," I said, forcing a smile. "Glad you could come." Ryan hugged me more sincerely. "This is amazing, Em. Really." As the night went on, I tried to stay present. People complimented the art, asked about commissions, clinked glasses. I floated from group to group, laughing in that slightly too loud way you do when your brain is half in a panic spiral. At some point, I saw Sophie whispering with my cousin Mia, both of them glancing at me. Sophie's hand went unconsciously to her belly. That's when I knew she was still planning it. By the time the DJ lowered the music and handed me the mic, my palms were so sweaty, I had to wipe them on my dress. "Hi," I said, hearing my voice echo slightly. "Thank you all so much for being here. Before I say anything, there's something I want to show you." And we're back to now. The video plays. The room is filled with the soft sounds of my childhood. Laughter, the scratch of pencils, the hum of cafe noises. People chuckle at the captions, coo at the photos of tiny Emma with pigtails and paint on her face. I don't look at the screen. I watch the crowd. Mom has a hand over her mouth, eyes shiny. Dad's jaw is clenched in that way it does when he's trying not to cry. Jade is already crying. Out of the corner of my eye, I watch Sophie. She's unusually still, watching a version of me she's never really paid attention to. The work, the late nights, the years before anything looked remotely glamorous. The video ends on a shot of me, taken 2 weeks ago, standing in the empty studio, paint on my hands, grinning at the camera. The words on the screen. Tonight, I let myself take up space. The lights come back up.
People clap.
A few whistle. My cheeks are hot, but for once it's not from embarrassment. It's from being seen. I clear my throat. So yeah, that's me. I laugh and the crowd laughs with me. Thank you for letting me take up space tonight. Some of you have supported me from day one. Some of you are clients who took a chance on a girl who used to deliver paintings in an Uber. Some of you are family who are finally seeing what I've been doing all these years. I let that one hang for half a beat. I'm grateful for all of you. I lift my glass. To dreams that took longer than people thought they should. To stubbornness. To art. To Emma Hart Creative Studio. Everyone echoes. To Emma. Glasses clink. And that's when Sophie half stands and says, "Actually, I'd like to." I put the mic down on the stand, step off the little crate I'm standing on, and move toward her. My smile doesn't slip. "Hey," I say quietly, just loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "If this is what I think it is, I'd really love to celebrate that with you. At a party where you're the main character. Not tonight." Her eyes flash. Don't be ridiculous. People can handle 2 announcements. I'm not taking anything away from you. Except you are, I say, still calm. You literally said in the family chat that you wanted to give people something real to celebrate. Like this isn't real. A murmur ripples through the people who've seen the screenshot. Sophie's face drains of color. "Who told you that?" she hisses. "Does it matter?" I reply. "This is my launch. You've had a lot of stages, sophomore. Let me have this one." For the first time in my life, I watch my sister open her mouth and fail to produce words. Her eyes flick around, realizing people are watching. Some are pretending not to. Others very much are. Ryan puts a hand on her arm. We can tell people another time, he says gently. It's not a big deal. Her head snaps toward him, betrayal flashing in her eyes. But she doesn't stand up again. She sits down, gripping her champagne glass, so hard I'm half afraid it'll shatter. I take a breath that feels like it goes all the way down to my socks, then climb back onto the crate and make a dumb joke about how the only baby I'm announcing tonight is my very expensive, very needy studio. People laugh. The tension slowly disperses. For the first time in my 30 years, I did not let my sister rewrite my night. And it felt insanely good. Okay, stepping out of Emma's paint-streaked shoes for a second. This is such a painfully relatable family dynamic. Emma isn't some vindictive mastermind here. She's a chronic peacemaker who finally hit her limit. You can feel how many times she's swallowed her own hurt just to keep the peace. 16th birthday, graduation, art shows. Her default mode is laugh it off and be chill, because calling it out would make her dramatic. That video wasn't some evil scheme. It was her way of saying, no, really, I exist.
Look.
Sophie, on the other hand, is the embodiment of golden child entitlement. She's not twirling a villain mustache in a tower. She's doing what's always worked for her, assuming every room is hers to command. What makes her behavior extra gross is that little line about giving people something real to celebrate. That's not ignorance. That's contempt. She doesn't just want attention. She wants attention at the expense of Emma's legitimacy. The twist isn't Emma exposing her sister's secret laundry to the whole room. The twist is a boundary, clear, public, and delivered without yelling. She doesn't scream or cry or create a scene. She uses the receipts just enough to stop the hijacking in its tracks. It's like social judo. Ryan quietly siding with Emma is huge, too. That's the moment the usual script glitches. Sophie expects everyone to bend around her gravity. When he doesn't, the whole orbit shifts a bit. Anyway, I'm not done eating popcorn with this family yet. On to the update. Update 8 months later. Hi, it's Emma again. A few people in my brain asked what happened after Thundersteelgate, so here we go. The immediate aftermath that night was awkward. Understatement of the century. After my little boundary-setting moment, the party carried on, but there was a weird undercurrent. Some relatives avoided eye contact with either of us. Others made a point of hugging me and whispering, "Good on you," in my ear. Mum looked like she was watching her favorite soap opera, but wasn't sure which character she was supposed to root for. Sophie and Ryan left early. No dramatic exit, just a tight-lipped "we're heading off," and a hug from Ryan that said, "I'm sorry," more clearly than words. Sophie barely looked at me. For the next week, radio silence. No messages, no calls. My parents did their usual conflict-avoidant thing. They asked me how the launch went, praised the turnout, talked about the catering, and completely avoided mentioning the elephant that had used my event as a breeding ground for family tension. Then Mum called and said, "We're having everyone over for Sunday lunch. It would mean a lot if you came." Translation: please come so we can pretend everything is normal. I went. Partly because I'm a sucker, partly because I was tired of walking around with the whole thing jangling in my chest like loose keys. When I arrived, the house smelled like roast lamb and tension. Sophie was already there, curled up on the couch, scrolling her phone. She looked up when I walked in, expression unreadable. "Hi," I said.
Eat.
It was the kind of greeting you give a neighbor, not your sister. We did the small talk dance through lunch. Work, weather, Mum complaining about fuel prices. Finally, after dessert, Mum clapped her hands too brightly and said, "Well, I think you girls should have a chat, don't you?" Sophie shot her a death glare. I almost laughed. Still, we ended up in our old shared bedroom, door half closed, sitting on opposite beds like we were teenagers again. "So," she said, crossing her arms, "you embarrass me in front of the whole family." I took a breath. "You are going to hijack my launch to announce your pregnancy." Her chin lifted. "It's our first baby, Emma. It's a big deal." "So was my first studio," I said. "Also kind of a big deal." She rolled her eyes. People can celebrate more than one thing. Then why did you say you wanted to give them something real to celebrate? I asked quietly. If it was just about sharing your joy, why did it have to come with a dig at mine? She froze. Just for a second, her mask slipped. I was joking, she said, but there was less conviction in it. You weren't. And even if you thought you were, it says a lot about what you actually think of what I do. Silence stretched between us. I could hear Dad in the lounge, the muffled sound of a sports game on TV. Do you have any idea what it's like? I said finally. To spend your whole life feeling like a supporting character in your own family? To work your arse off for something and know that if you invite your family, there's a decent chance you'll get 5 minutes of attention before someone announces an engagement or a job or whatever, and suddenly your background noise again. She looked down at her hands. It's not my fault Mom and Dad favor me, she said, voice small. It was the closest she'd ever come to acknowledging it. No, I said. But you've absolutely taken advantage of it. You walk into rooms like you're owed the oxygen. And you talk about my career like it's a cute hobby. That hurts, sophomore. It's hurt for years. She was quiet for a long time. Ryan thought it was a bad idea, she muttered eventually. The announcement at your party. He said it would be stepping on your toes. I told him you wouldn't mind. That you'd probably be relieved because you hate being the center of attention. I laughed, a sharp sound. I hate being the center of attention if it means competing with you. There's a difference. Her eyes went shiny. You made me feel like trash, she whispered. Like some cartoon villain. In front of everyone. I could have read your text from a mic, I said. I didn't. I talked to you quietly. I didn't say a word about your news. I just said not tonight. If that made you feel like a villain, maybe that says something about how used you are to getting your way. She flinched. I instantly felt a pang of guilt, but I didn't walk it back. I'm not saying you're horrible, I added. I'm saying you're used to being first. And I needed, for once, to not be pushed aside in my own story. A tear slid down her cheek. She swiped it away angrily. We were going to tell Mom and Dad that night, she said. I wanted it to be special. You can still make it special, I said. Have your own dinner. Your own reveal. I'll bring the stupid cake. I'll blow up the balloons. I'll cheer. I just couldn't do it at my launch. Not after everything. She sniffed. We already told them, she muttered. Mom screamed. Dad cried. It was a whole thing. They actually managed to focus on us for once, so congrats on that. The bitterness in her voice surprised me. What do you mean, for once? I asked. They've always focused on you. She gave me a look that was half sad, half incredulous. You think that's fun, she said. Being the one they pin all their expectations on? Every exam, every job application, Mom hovering like a vulture asking for updates. Dad telling me I can't take risks because I have to set an example? She snorted. They didn't ignore you because they hated you, They ignored you because you were safe. Because if you fell, it wouldn't shatter their idea of themselves. That landed like a punch. We sat there, both staring at the carpet. I'm sorry I said your art wasn't real, she said at last, voice low. I was jealous. You get to do something you actually love. I hate my job most days. But I can't quit, because then I'm the failure. The one who wasted her degree. It was so far from the story I'd been telling myself, that she thought I was a joke, that she was living her dream life, that my brain almost short-circuited. I'm sorry you feel trapped, I said slowly. Really? I wouldn't wish that on anyone. We didn't hug it out and magically heal a decade of resentment in that one afternoon. But something cracked open between us. A tiny, messy, painful honesty. Over the next few months, things softened. Sophie did have her own baby announcement dinner. I went, with a ridiculous gift bag full of baby onesies printed with bad puns. I cheered. I cried when she showed us the ultrasound. People made jokes about, don't worry, Emma. We know not to schedule anything on your big nights. And for once it didn't land like a knife. She started asking about my business without the condescension. She even posted one of my paintings on her work's internal social page, which led to a commission. We're not best friends. But we're not silent rivals anymore, either. We're two slightly bruised women trying to figure out how to be sisters in a family that trained us to compete. As for me, I still replay that moment sometimes. The feel of the mic in my hand, the weight of the room, the look on Sophie's face when I said, "Not tonight." A part of me worries I was too harsh. Another part of me, the part that slept like a baby afterwards for the first time before a big event, knows I needed that moment more than anyone else in the room knew. If I had to sum it up, I'd say this. My sister tried to steal my spotlight. The twist I planned wasn't just about stopping her. It was about finally stepping fully into the light myself and inviting her to stand in her own instead of trying to live in mine. All right, final verdict time on the Hart Family Theater. Emma, our narrator, is basically the poster child for recovering people-pleaser with a backbone under construction. She spends most of her life being the accommodating one, laughing off digs, shrinking so other people can shine. What makes her satisfying isn't that she suddenly becomes ruthless. It's that she finally uses her words in the moment instead of in the shower 3 days later. The video isn't a petty stunt. It's a love letter to her own journey. The boundary with Sophie is clear, measured, and honestly overdue. Could she have chosen a more private moment? Maybe. But let's be real. The problem has always happened in public, so the solution had to at least partially live there too. Sophie, is she awful? Sometimes, yes. That "something real to celebrate" line is brutal. It reduces Emma's entire career to a cute hobby in one swipe. She's used to orbiting the family as the sun, and anyone else's achievements are background stars at best. But the update complicates her in a good way. Underneath the golden child gloss, there's someone who feels suffocated by expectations, jealous of her sister's freedom, and too proud to admit it until she's backed into a corner. She absolutely needed that boundary. Getting publicly told no for the first time in her life probably felt like being shoved off stage mid-monologue. But it also cracked the script she'd been following without thinking. Mom and Dad, they're low-key the architects of this mess. They split the daughters into archetypes, responsible one versus artsy one, and then acted surprised when those roles turned into resentment. They thought they were being practical. In reality, they created a hierarchy where Sophie carried the weight and Emma got treated like decoration. The fact that they're dazzled by Emma's studio now doesn't erase years of minimizing comments. That said, they're not actively malicious, just emotionally lazy. It's easier to brag about the entrepreneur daughter than to admit they once told her she couldn't live off campuses. Ryan, quiet MVP. He's the one who gently supports Emma's boundary at the party and pushes back on Sophie's worst instincts behind the scenes. He doesn't feed her delusions of entitlement, which is probably the only reason the story ends with a conversation and not complete nuclear fallout. Overall, this isn't a clean cut. Villain gets destroyed, heroine buys a yacht, revenge tale, and that's why it works. The twist Emma plans doesn't destroy her sister. It disrupts a toxic pattern. The real win isn't that Sophie is left speechless in that one moment. The real win is 8 months later, when the sisters are finally speaking actual truths instead of lines handed to them by their parents' anxieties. If revenge is living well, then Emma nails it. But if healing is learning to live well without needing your family to stay the villains forever, she's on her way there too.